Good evening, treasure seekers. This is Blake coming to you live from New Mexico, and joining me as always from Washington State, it's Bryn and Cody. How's it going, guys?
Good evening. I'm excited for this follow-up discussion to the live that I guess was that just earlier this week, officially? Our live from earlier this week. We were talking about the butterfly that we found, and ever since then I have found nothing but butterflies in my day-to-day life. All week I just keep seeing butterflies everywhere, and it's like coincidence of the day constantly.
It's a flutter of excitement.
Lots of flutters of excitement.
All right, so yeah, we are going to be covering. This is not going to be a standard episode, even though we will have a little bit of mailbag and a little bit of Discord detectives. But yeah, I think today we're just going to be covering follow up, as Bryn you mentioned, with the reveal that the butterfly in our Unbreakable Thread on the title page was added after the fact. It was not from the illustrator. Which is what we revealed in the live show. I don't know if everyone's been able to see that live show that got put out on Monday night. So we had our standard episode come out Monday night, and then we had an emergency live session after that to talk about this email that we got from the illustrator of our Unbreakable Thread, which has been noted. Our Unbreakable Thread, the Jon Collins-Black children's book. It's noted in There's Treasure Inside by Jon that there is a clue or two in our Unbreakable Thread. And so we think that this butterfly is definitely a clue because it was added in after the fact without the illustrator's knowledge. I'll quick pull up a little picture of that real quick, kind of talk you through our process. When we did a deep dive into our Unbreakable Thread before we had this information, obviously we had pulled out the fact that there had been at least one instance of a Photoshop. And I don't remember who exactly noted this. Bryn or Cody? Bryn? Okay.
I'll take credit, thank you.
The art on the book jacket of our Unbreakable Thread was different than the art that's on the solid hardcover if you take the jacket off. And I'm showing the example here of this tree on the book jacket, I believe. Whoops, sorry. The book jacket here, and then you can see it was edited on the hard copy of the book, or vice versa. Sorry, I can look right now. So the blob is there on the jacket. The blob is not there on the hardcover of the book. Anyway, so we had some evidence that there had been a little bit of photoshopping done of some of these images, and then last Sunday we got an email from the illustrator Nicole Giselle that said we were spot on, that we found that edit, and then she added a couple more. So things that were added after the fact include this butterfly on the title page, which I think is probably the major finding here. This was added in after the fact. Lots of speculation about what this means that we'll be going over tonight. And then supposedly on the first spread, the hairline of the baby was also photoshopped in some way. That's according to the illustrator of our Unbreakable Thread. So those are the two pieces of information we're working off of. This will be a rare occurrence where we actually get some hard information. Everything else is going to be speculation, so that's why we went live on Monday. We might not get this type of information from here on out, so we thought it was important to share with everybody. All right, anything that I missed from that quick recap, Bryn and Cody?
No, I think that's a good overview. Yeah, I think, like you said, just doubling down on how exciting it is to have something like definitive to work off of, which is, like you said, incredibly rare. So I'm excited about this. It looks like you pulled up the next image. What we're leading into here.
Yeah, the other speculation that we made on Monday night was that butterfly on the title page of our Unbreakable Thread leads us to believe, and I think we're all in agreement, that this is probably a butterfly that's on the title page of There's Treasure Inside. So lots of, or at least one solid link, I think, here to a butterfly theme. And now, what do we make of this? What does a butterfly mean? How much does it mean? It can't be a key to the entire treasure, I don't think. But certainly, hopefully, we can pull some interesting information out of this, and let's do some speculation tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk this through. When we found this information, I know like we kind of sat down just initially and we're like, oh well, what could this possibly mean? And we had like this list right off the bat of everything that we could think of that was either like butterfly connection to the book or wings connection. And so we had like a pretty fast, extensive preliminary list. And that was a week ago. So then we all kind of have branched off since then, done our own individual research to see what else we could dig up as far as what this could be hinting at in our eyes. So I'm really excited to see what you guys have found. I feel like I found a large number of like high level information. So I don't know how deep you guys have gotten, but yeah, excited to hear what we've all found.
Yeah, so this will be a little bit freestyle. We don't have a particular plan in place. We're just going to go through different thoughts and discussions, and this might be 20 minutes. It might be longer. We'll see.
Well, I guess, if we're ready to kick off, I have a point that I think kind of should be set up front. Um, I know, is that okay? Can I proceed?
Of course, of course.
Okay, okay. So I know you said the title page, and is that, I don't know if I'm saying when I say copyright page, if that's like the correct terminology. I'm sure there's a word for that page.
Yeah, sorry.
Um,
I was definitely misspeaking all the beginning of this episode. It's the copyright page. Yeah, it's not the title page. I apologize. Thank you.
so in our Unbreakable thread, on that copyright page, it's also the same page where he has the dedication to his two children,
Mm-hmm.
is where that butterfly is. And so I think the first main connection that we all kind of agreed upon was, so when you look in There's Treasure Inside, he has the copyright page, and then he also then on the adjacent page in the same spread has that dedication, well, a dedication to his kids again, right? So it's kind of like the copyright and the dedications together are where you find this butterfly, which is what made us so confident that by him adding the butterfly to our Unbreakable thread is why we're so confident that this would also then be a butterfly in the same position of the book of There's Treasure Inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I will then add on to that in the acknowledgement section of There's Treasure Inside, when he acknowledges his children, he says, "Your enthusiasm for life lifts me up on wings. It invigorates me. Your glowing faces lit a path for all this to be possible." So, of course, your enthusiasm lifts me up on wings is kind of just another, I would say, like, really solidifies that this is all tied together in this way.
Yeah, that's a really good pull. That again is from the end of There's Treasure Inside in the dedications or acknowledgements section. So yeah, a connection to wings. So basically, my thought process is trying to pull out all of the references to flying, uplift, wings, flight in the book, and see where that takes me, which is not too far yet, but I'm doing another read through of There's Treasure Inside, and I'm partway through chapter 2, so that's as far as I've gotten.
Nice. Well, I guess I kind of have a list of things that are pretty, it certainly would not be like coming out hot with like ranked by any particular uh level of confidence in my list, but I'm happy to kick us off just with some things that I have found, if that seems like a reasonable place, and we can kind of all throw in what we've found.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Go
Does that
ahead,
good?
Bryn. Lead the charge.
All right. So my notes I've just personally kept in order of chapter number. So week weak coming out of the gates here, but I will say chapter one, um, I thought sapphire under the UV light, uh, butterflies see UV light.
Hmm.
So, admittedly, this feels like a huge stretch, but I was just trying to kind of gather everything that I could. I would say a huge stretch because a lot of animals can see UV light. So, it's nothing particularly unique to butterflies, but I know we had called out the UV light as being interesting in chapter one, um, early on. Go ahead, Cody.
I will add on to that
Okay.
because I think it's more significant than you may think. Because not only
Okay.
can they see ultraviolet light, but I've got a quote here, I think. Convincing evidence that migrant monarch butterflies use a magnetic compass to aid their fall migration. The use of this inclination compass is light dependent, utilizing ultraviolet A blue light between 380 and 420 nm. I think that's nanometers, right? For
Yes.
wavelength.
Yes.
So yeah, big picture there is that not only can they see the ultraviolet light, but the ultraviolet light is required for them to use this kind of very spooky, magical, not very well understood um basic compass, like the compass almost like charges with the UV light. So I think it's the UV light being connected to butterflies is stronger than just them being able to see the UV light.
And you mentioned blue light there as well, which he's talking about his son in chapter one. His eyes shine like blue lasers.
Ooh.
Solved. Let's just call it an episode. I think we've got it. Nice.
Yeah, I went back to that little excerpt about the picture because I almost thought that he had listed a specific like nanometer, like this wavelength of UV light, but he didn't. I was hoping it would have fell under that in that range there. That would have been extra exciting, but
Yeah.
not the case.
Well, how do we? I mean, I'm happy to go through my list, but I don't want to just like steal everybody's thoughts. Do you want to go round robin?
Are you
I
doing
don't.
chapter by chapter, Bryn, or?
For the stuff that I found, I just have it listed by chapter.
Okay. Well, I want to go back since you started with chapter one and go into the introduction, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, please do, please do.
Yay. Intro. Like a moth to a fiery flame was
Mm-hmm.
mentioned in his pursuit of joy. And then when he's talking about the treasure items that he collected, the list became an organic creature, evolving, growing longer and larger day by day. So if we're thinking about metamorphosis of a butterfly
Mm-hmm.
from a caterpillar into a
Ooh,
butterfly, I thought
baby.
that was an interesting connection that's suddenly top of mind. So, sorry, a couple things from the intro I wanted to point out there.
Yeah, no, that's those are really good finds. A moth, I mean, it's basically like a night butterfly, and then I would say a butterfly is like, yeah, exactly like quintessential metamorphosis. So that's a really good call as well.
Thank you. Cody, you want to
Nice
say
finds.
something?
Or what?
Did you want to say something? Sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
No, I don't think so. I've also got a bunch of notes that are laid out similarly, but I think I'm gonna skip mine for now. We'll just come back to all of mine as a whole. It'll be easier to talk about them as a whole than um, picking them out chapter by chapter for some of my stuff.
Okay, so why don't you continue on, Bryn? And I'm going to stop when it gets to chapter two because that's as far as I've gotten.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds good. And I will say, like, I did not like go back and reread the book and
Right.
find these notes. It was just kind of things that like as I skimmed back through the book, I'm like, oh yeah, this kind of reminds me of that. I should look into that. So it's very I don't have like a comprehensive this is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was chapter one. Chapter two, we have the 100 rings of Tuyet Nuyet, and the subhead for that chapter was Don't Wing It. That's as
Good.
far as the detail I have for chapter two.
You didn't get wormed its way inside my skull.
I did not.
Um, the entire span of publication. And
like a wingspan?
Span is mentioned twice. So this only because I'm doing the detailed read through. So we're going to have a little bit of differences. And thinking about that, he brought up apple in chapter 1. Actually, now I'm thinking about worms as well. That a caterpillar might eat into an apple and then become a butterfly. So
I don't think Bryn or I did a full reread through.
I know.
No.
But no, what I want to say is that with just the quality of the stuff you're picking up on, just rereading, even just starting to reread, it seems like that may be necessary to really make all these connections with the butterfly theme. Because I skimmed through stuff and then you kind of focused in on stuff that I remembered from my first read versus rereading everything. And it really seems like, you're coming up with some really quality stuff. We may have to reread the whole book. Through that lens.
I would caution a little bit thinking about Jon wouldn't want to put necessarily a game changing or like key clue into our Unbreakable Thread, I don't think. So these could be off the rails in terms of detail and really making leaps to anything I'm finding that could be butterfly related, but that's where I'm going to start, is consider everything.
I mean, I think there would be certain chapters where maybe this butterfly theme comes into play and others that it probably does not at all. Because I think we're going to end up, when we get to a solve for this whole book, there's going to be like different buckets of clues that all come together. So it's not like butterflies will be throughout every chapter and solve this mystery. Mm-hmm. But if we have a chapter that has the subhead, don't wing it, then I think it's fair to think like we'll find a lot of wing butterfly clues in this particular chapter. So I think that's really exciting that you found that in this chapter. That feels much less like confirmation biasy.
It's also hard to. Sorry, Bryn, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's also hard to say, hey, don't worry so much about this butterfly one, because he wouldn't put, a super critical clue in our Unbreakable Thread. It's hard to make that determination at this stage because, it could be the first part of a multi-tiered kind of solve that just gets you on the right path to begin with. I think it probably just serves us best at this point to assume that just to look for anything we can. And I don't know.
I kind of agree with Cody, because I also think he would not have been under the assumption that anybody would have gotten this butterfly addition to our Unbreakable Thread as a fact. Like, I think to stumble upon this as a clue, you probably in his mind would have had to have maybe figured out that it was a butterfly in there's treasure inside, and then somehow tied that back to our Unbreakable Thread. I would think
the Unbreakable Thread side could even be a confirmer, as they call it.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus like kind of how for us it was like the leap off point, right?
That's true.
Yeah, I think given that we were told that this was added, it makes it feel super obvious, right? But I think if we didn't have that information, I don't know if we ever would have picked up on that, because yes, now that we can look at it closely, it's like, well, yes, it does look different than the rest of the illustration, but I don't think we ever would have necessarily made that ourselves. At least not anytime soon.
Right. I agree with that.
One other comment I wanted to make about your handful of quotes or excerpts that you pulled out of the text there, Blake. I really like that it seems like they're all consistently part of the text where he's like using kind of his what would be the phrase, kind of his whimsical language, not his like not as straightforward factual language, when he's kind of making those creative decisions in the way he's phrasing things.
That's a good point.
Someone say what I'm trying to say, but articulate it better, please? Because I
It's
I feel like
more.
my point's not coming across, but you know what I
No,
mean.
I think you're correct in saying the whimsical language. It's part of where his commentary comes in more so than facts, like you're saying. So where
Yeah.
he's able to add flowery language and description, you're right. It does seem to be in those sections.
Yeah, so I really like that.
A couple more things from chapter 2, just quickly.
Yes.
Brahma, the creator of the universe. I believe this is when he's talking about Hinduism. If I have the religion wrong, I apologize. It's a couple that are being mentioned there. I don't have it open right now. Brahma, the creator of the universe, was born from an egg of gold. Brahma then created the earth from a golden embryo. So again, thinking about life cycle, and then he mentions evolution a couple lines below that as well. So that's all I've got for detailed notes. So you won't hear from me as much going through the rest of this, but it's, as you pointed out, Cody, this may be a very good exercise.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump ahead to chapter 6, which is Rubies to Wear. Subhead: Inspiration is welcome. So the main reason that I was so drawn to chapter 6, which we very briefly noted in the live video, was this is the chapter where he had a couple jewelry pieces commissioned, one including the Angie Marie wing earrings. And so, of course, having the butterflies on the mind, wings on the mind, this really stood out, especially because it was something that he asked specifically for. So it's like an opportunity for him to insert something into the treasure that is very fitting. So my notes from chapter 6, a few quotes here. Like a wise breeze blowing in the direction I need to go, inspiration guides me. So there is like this breeze wind thread throughout this chapter as well when he's talking about inspiration. And so this felt, I guess, relevant to butterflies and like flying, aviation, wings in general.
Mm-hmm.
A different quote: a gentle wind were nudging me to take a look. This is when he's talking about when he saw the ad to look into Angie Marie's artwork. Like the wind, inspiration is an invisible force that can move us. And with all these, I guess I'm just like picturing a butterfly kind of getting like shifted around in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Just feel for where its breeze nudges you. And this gets off on a little bit of a tangent here. So then when we get talking about the wing-shaped earrings, he mentions that Angie Marie has an Egyptian Dominican heritage. And so this felt particularly interesting because the other commissioned artwork by Lauren Harwell Godfrey was a ruby pendant that he calls out in the caption as a variation of her Cleopatra vault collection. So we have the Egyptian Dominican heritage called out, and then we have him pulling a piece specifically from Cleopatra vault collection from Lauren's collection. So it just seemed like maybe a little too coincidental that he's specifically making those two notes with these two commissioned pieces. So just to bring this back to butterflies, I mean, I haven't done a deep dive into any of this necessarily, but just off the top, there's a Cleopatra butterfly. So there's one connection.
Mm-hmm.
I did note that in ancient Egypt, butterflies are not particularly prevalent in tomb art. When they are used in artwork, they're believed to be simply used as beauty, like a representation of beauty, rather than being something symbolic. What else do I have? She is the type of person that uplifts simply through the vivaciousness of her voice. So that was JCB's comments on, I think, talking to Angie Marie. So again, we have in the acknowledgments about his children that they uplift him, And then here, when he is speaking about the wing earrings, again, that she uplifts.
Very good.
I think for me, the second two quotes you mentioned, I'm on board with. I think some of the first ones about the wind, it's a little bit too much of a jump for my liking for all the wind stuff to be about butterflies. I think it's more likely that's either nothing or related to, something else you're supposed to be picking up about wind, than tied to the butterfly theme to me.
I would just say, totally, I get what you're saying. I guess I would just say a little bit more broad. I'm thinking maybe more a level out from butterflies to the idea of wings in the air, aviation, like as a more broad concept that I'm kind of building off of here with butterflies as the starting point.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm also I'm trying to capture aviation stuff as well. So a couple of my chapter 2 notes, or actually chapter 1 notes mention the first successful product pilot when he's mentioning the Apple One computer, and Mike Scott captained Apple. So I'm also trying to bring in the aviation terms during my deep dive as well. So I'm kind of on board with Bryn here.
All right, I'm convinced. You guys have convinced me. And both of those that you just mentioned, Blake, seem like very interesting word choice on both of those.
They were particularly the first successful product pilot. Why did you add in pilot there?
Yeah.
Amelia Earhart.
Exactly. I think we're going to find a lot of references in the old Amelia Earhart chapter.
All right. Can we do our first mailbag?
Yes.
Mailbag. We've got mail.
So, because it's related to chapter 4, before we get too far ahead, we had an anonymous email come in regarding butterflies. He mentions the feeling in his stomach multiple times in the book. And both of those references, I believe, are in chapter 4, at least that I could find on Quick Pass. So page 48, which is definitely my favorite quote in the entire book, as you guys know. For a moment, I looked with disappointment at my gnarled dig site, when he's talking about digging up, trying to find smoky quartz in that lot. But then, like a bee landing on a pistol, a ping of excitement buzzed in my belly. So thinking about getting butterflies in your stomach as a common trope, right? And then later in the chapter on page 55, in the future, if something about this treasure hunt sparks in your belly the same fire I felt then, I will smile big and wide, for this is such a wonderful feeling indeed. So those are the two references this listener helped us pick out.
I love that.
From butterflies in your stomach concept, even though it's not explicitly said butterflies in your stomach. That seems like a very common saying that you could apply to both of those sentences.
That's a 10 out of 10 mailbag right there. That is, I think that's wonderful. That's excellent finds, great connections.
We've talked a couple times in a couple previous podcasts. I think it was California, right? Where we said, was it California? Where he said, like in the part 2 box, that the only state he mentioned was California. So we feel like that's actually a strike against California being the state that it's found in, because it's like, seems too on the nose for the only state that you mentioned in the book to like be the actual state that it's found in. Along those same lines, I didn't find any instances of him actually using the word butterfly or butterflies in the book. Right. And at first you'd think, oh, that's not good. But I actually think it is good. I think that because there's so many connections with butterflies, for him to have gone out of his way, in my mind, gone out of his way to not use it, I feel like that's more evidence that it is important than that it isn't important. And I'm bringing this up now because I feel even stronger in that opinion after hearing those two descriptions of basically he's describing butterflies in your stomach in ways where he doesn't have to use the word butterfly.
Right,
Mhm.
right. He could have very easily said butterflies in his stomach during his sales pitch, right? When he was doing the sales of the water filters, like that would have been another opportunity. He did not. So, yeah, good point, Cody.
And then, too, if you have enjoy serenade, flutter of excitement, that's kind of the same idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to include that then in the final poem, which he has said in his own words that is very important. So uh, that feels like a nice bow on that.
Agreed. All right, continue, Britain.
Okay, so my last comment on chapter 6 was that it leads into chapter 7, which is Amelia's autograph, which is obviously very heavy on flying and aviation. So I guess I personally didn't go into chapter 7 to go through just because I was kind of in my mind knew, well, this is heavy on aviation. So I don't have any specifics on that. Just more, I thought it was more noteworthy that they were adjacent chapters for the sake of kind of bolstering this argument.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit heavy in terms of flight. So maybe it's important, probably important, but how do you discern the clues out of there? I don't know. Yet.
Yeah. Okay. So then I'm actually going to jump ahead to chapter 13.
Mm-hmm.
This might be rough, but the Michael Jordan rookie card. I think we mentioned this when we did the chapter recap, but Air Jordan could be a stretch, but I just think like Michael Jordan, Air Jordan, like what's that look, Cody?
What look?
You look so skeptical.
I wasn't making a look.
Yes,
Rewind the
sorry.
tape. Take a look. I wasn't making a face.
So I think I just thought it was noteworthy. Um, Obviously Michael Jordan is relevant for many things beyond that and makes sense in the chapter or makes sense in the scope of the book for many reasons beyond this. But I do think there's potential that there could be like this Air Jordan connection.
Are you going to talk
Chapter,
about any of the AI images, Bryn? You think?
I don't have any comments on AI images.
Okay, we'll continue on, but I think I don't know. There's a couple that I want to point out just off the top of my head, but let's continue with your train of thought.
Perfect. Let's see. Chapter 16, the 1960 Rome Olympic gold medal. Don't give up. So this is the chapter about Wilma Rudolph. And we have the very prevalent Olympic rings graphic in this chapter. I think we'll get back to the rings when we have a mailbag later on. That will tie back to the significance of the Olympic rings. Page 134, the caption. So there's the gold medal, and the caption for the gold medal is Wilma Rudolph and Cassius Clay both won gold medals in Rome. So it's a little interesting that he inserts Cassius Clay here. But at the end of the chapter, I would say maybe somewhat forcefully, he includes the little section about Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, um, that little section about him losing his medal at the end of this Wilma Rudolph chapter, which very much feels like it was tacked on at the end. So when we think Muhammad Ali, we can definitely then think float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. So this little bridge section almost feels like, is it potentially added to just kind of try to get this additional butterfly bee, I mean, a bee on a pistol. So I think there could be a lot that goes into the float like a butterfly, sting like a bee addition here.
Mm-hmm. And that's, yeah, again, like you both said, it's not explicitly mentioned, but it's a major connection to Muhammad Ali for sure.
So going through my list, I guess these aren't chapter notes anymore.
Okay. They're just pick nuggets, direct.
These are just some picked nuggets. Okay, going back to the Hopi. We have the Hopi calendar. We have the chapter speaking very specifically to the Hopi tribe. Seems like there is a significant connection with butterflies to the Hopi tribe. They have the Hopi, so the butterfly maiden as a kachina or a spirit being. And we have that Hopi calendar, very large, full page in the book, and that outlines the calendar with the different dances that are significant for each part of the year. And the butterfly dance is a dance that is every spring. She dances from flower to flower, pollinating the fields and flowers and bringing rain. So that's that butterfly maiden. So again, if we have so much emphasis on the Hopi and the dances, particularly, the fact that we have this butterfly dance, bringing in the flower to flower, the pollination idea, beyond a pistil. I know we continue to find somewhat of like this botanical theme throughout the chapter or throughout the book as well. This seems like it maybe pulls together a few pretty big ideas in the book. A couple other notes relating to Hopi. The butterfly was frequently woven into baskets as a pattern. So I thought you would like that. We bring in some weaving theme here. And then, so, I mean, the butterfly was obviously symbolic to them because of this idea of like the fertilization and, you know, having a nice harvest, everything that is important for. And we also have Charles Loma. And we explicitly are told in the chapter that he is a pilot. He was flying with his niece, who's also a pilot. So they have this strong aviation theme in the chapter as well. That's what I've got on the Hopi tribe.
Yeah, I think that Hopi stuff is really strong. And I think it's worth diving into more. And I've started diving into it more, not to the point where I want to speak on it right now. But I've done a lot more looking in and pulling on that thread. And I think that has the potential to be like an important connection.
I know I've said it so many times, but the fact that like calendar graphic is one of one in the book. There's no other graphic that has a dedicated page. We just have artifacts or artwork that gets that type of treatment, that much emphasis. So the fact that that gets that big of a section of the book, it has to be very critical.
And that it has its own special section about, you know, a note on the Hopi calendar or culture that's unique as well. So there's must be connections here that we have to make, or the lion's share.
Very much. So moving on, I had a couple notes on art in the book that seem important here with butterflies or flying. Page 173, we have the artwork that's, I don't want to say real artwork. It's an actual piece of art. He did not create this piece of art. It is Mouth of Flower by Octavio Ocampo. And this is, I don't know, somewhat of a visual illusion where you have different elements that are themselves, but then you can also view it as a face, if you guys remember that image. And in this picture, we have the butterfly as a nose. So I'm putting extra emphasis and stock into, like, if he commissioned our artwork piece, he's explicitly trying to get something very specific. If he needed this specific piece of artwork, rather than him creating it, it seems really important that he picked one that has a butterfly in it too. So, Blake, you were actually the one that picked up on that. So I'm stealing your thunder here.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's definitely a strong connection to butterfly in the artwork. And then the other one being on the Appalachian Trail. Certainly there's Appalachian Trail box, which is a part 2 box. There's certainly a butterfly there, but again, not explicitly called out in the text anywhere. Pulling on the thread of artwork, going backwards to the book, when we first learned about this connection of flight and butterflies, I was very excited. So thinking about page 192, which is the Picasso chapter, obviously there's a prominent feature of doves in that AI, assumingly AI generated artwork, and the mention of the dove mural in that chapter. On page 177, where Jon Collins-Black is describing the discovery of the Tanzanite. I've always thought that guy was just like flying off a cliff. The AI artwork, you're saying he's diving into the berm or whatever to avoid the charging buffalo, but certainly that looks like a guy that's like taking off and flying. You mentioned the butterfly one. Obviously, there's a picture of the airplane in the Amelia Earhart chapter. And then there's also in the Michael Jordan chapter, the AI art of the kid doing the layup, which is definitely a flight like movement as well. So
lifting up.
Right. And there's pictures of birds in the sunken treasure ship AI art at the beginning of that chapter. And then it kind of tapers off at the beginning of the book, I would say more. There's not prominently flight themes on all of the artwork, I would say, because I searched pretty hard to try to make connections to some of those other ones and could not. So anyway, but I think there is a fair representation of things that could be, translated into flight at some level.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if you took it to like the moon rock chapter, and I mean, you get even higher, so you just get into space, and then you have like that as kind of a form of wings as well. So, yeah, it can be taken a lot of different ways. But I'm glad you mentioned that Picasso style artwork. That was definitely on my radar as well with the doves. Yeah, I like that layup one too. I would not have picked up on that, but now that you mention it, I think that feels like fair game as well.
Yeah, especially because you brought up the Michael Jordan. I mean, even
Air Jordan.
Yep.
Okay, I'm almost done with my list here. I did a little note on pollination because we have the botanical theme, bee landing on a pistil, butterflies are pollinators. And last but not least, Joy's serenade. Like I said, a flutter of excitement all around. And then two other quotes that weren't maybe as directly relevant were, "You may never know how high you ever want to be," and "The sky smiles on you."
Nice.
So that's my list. Sorry if I just like stole a bunch of stuff from you guys, but
no, not at all. Cody, do you want to dive into some of your investigation?
Yeah, we can segue into so one of the first things I did after we kind of made the butterfly connection is I looked through the book for both kind of obvious keywords and then also kind of maybe more poetic or symbolic keywords to just kind of see the frequency of how often those were used, or also, in what context they were used. Kind of like we talked about earlier, if it's something that he kind of stuck in there, or if it kind of naturally flowed in the narrative. So probably the most interesting thing I found we already talked about, which is that I didn't find any instances of butterfly or butterflies anywhere in the book, even though it feels like it's just riddled with kind of references where it's just dancing around saying the word, which, like I said earlier, to me, I think that's even more powerful than if he said butterflies 10 times in the book. Another kind of obvious keyword I think we've talked about everywhere it shows up in the book, it was wings. So I had that written down. Like I said, we already talked about all of those. So moving on to a couple of interesting poetic or symbolic keywords. I had ascend, which is probably the weaker of the three I'm going to touch on right now. Page 60, Art Smith's reputation ascended. Page 74, the night sky she ascended into was filled with with heavy and brutal storms. And page 184, Alexander's decorated general Ptolemy ascended to power in Egypt. That one's probably my weaker one. My second place would be Emergence. I thought Emergence was a good one. Page 37. From the Finder Points. Oh, I might have typoed there, but from the Finder Points, Beauty Emerges, page 124. More about a contest for profit or fame where winners and losers emerge from a zero-sum game. And page 185, their emergence into the sun represented a transition from the underworld to the world above. And then probably the most interesting one, because it's kind of more closely related in my mind, at least, and also more instances of it in the book, is Transformation. So page 12, later the Spanish quest for riches created a great transformation in the Americas. Page 49. So how did a young teenager with no money begin to slowly transform an old person's hobby into a global billion-dollar industry? Page 111, the California gold rush would become the most transformative treasure hunt in our country's history. Page 118, then I transformed into Michael Jordan. Page 182, Daphne's father, desiring for his daughter to remain unsullied over all else, complied and transformed her into a laurel tree. So, handful of transformation or transforms.
I really like that I think all the words that you found, especially tying back to Blake's finds in the introduction, especially since they're in the introduction of this like idea of butterfly metamorphosis. And I keep trying to keep like a very high level perspective of what is JCB trying to teach us in this book as well. So, I mean, he throughout this book is trying to tell us that as humans, we all have these different experiences, but we all are seeking the same thing, right? And we all kind of have these shared experiences as humans, just in different ways. And so this idea of transformation, to play off of your last word, feels like a very universal thing that he could almost base this book around, right? Like as opportunities to grow and develop as humans. And if he's trying to think of a way to represent that as a metaphor throughout the book, like a butterfly in metamorphosis seems pretty appropriate, right? Just a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to connect this for sure.
All right. You want me to move on to something else I got?
So good. I would add evolve or evolution to that, but we'll capture these things as we do a deeper dive.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I'm kind of just walking through this first part here is kind of my first thoughts and my first things I started kind of looking into and putting effort into once we made that initial connection with the butterflies. So from there, after kind of, doing that first scan for obvious keywords, I try to approach it kind of from the other direction and look into fun facts about butterflies.
Nice.
Because I feel like, especially JCB comes off like the kind of guy who like he wants to like create something interesting and not just like wouldn't just like hide direct butterfly references, but also like maybe connections to more interesting aspects of butterflies and fun facts about them. It can incorporate those in. So I already touched on, I think that the UV one might have been my favorite. I already touched on that one.
Sorry.
But some other things that I think definitely could be interesting and are good to know as we start reading through the book is they taste with their feet. That's a little fun fact, huh?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Huh.
I would like it better if it was hands for hand theme.
Yes. I don't know if they have hands. They're cold-blooded. They must bask in the sun to warm their muscles. Flight isn't possible below approximately 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. And when I read that, it immediately made me think of the Joyous Serenade line. And if you spy others warming in the sunlight.
Ooh.
Oh.
because the quote that I pulled was, "They must bask in the sun to warm their muscles. Flight isn't possible below approximately 10 to 15 degrees Celsius."
Nice, Cody.
Seems very, very,
Clutch.
wow. I never know what you guys are going to like and not going to like.
So good.
I like that. Favorite thing
All
you've
right.
said today.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Next one's talking about the monarch butterfly and their migration. The quote I pulled on that one was that it's up to a 3,000-mile migration. Monarch is the only known butterfly to make a two-way migration like birds do. Monarchs in eastern North America have a second home in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Mexico, and monarchs in western North America overwinter in California. So that seems interesting and very similar to kind of how we were looking at like sun and moon orbits and what's it called, the eclipses and those paths. Now we'd have like a butterfly migration path that also covers the continental United States as well. So that one seemed interesting just for the geography of it.
Mailbag. We've got mail.
You fell into the trap of our second mailbag segment, Cody.
All right, let me get my one. I only have one more, so let me do this one first.
Okay.
Oh, this is not clutch.
You want to do mailbag first?
Yeah, it's directly related to your migration discussion, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll just come back and just have my one
Yes.
low and last fun fact.
Exactly.
It's casual.
God, we're so casual.
So, mailbag from Barrett. He talks about watching the last episode. I got curious today and poked around a bit, and here's something cool I found that may fall under horseshoes and hand grenades, or perhaps a solid hit. And he pulls up this website from bcityusa.org/5 monarch migration facts. So I don't know if you were getting your information from the same site or not, Cody, but this was a migration pattern that he shows for migration of monarch butterflies within the United States. Anything catch your eye here that's interesting? The Olympic rings are in play.
Ooh.
So that was a connection that Barrett made here, is that even if we're using the Olympic theme concept of where different boxes could be distributed throughout the US, this butterfly pattern also kind of fits that particular layout of the Olympic rings as well, even though it's a little bit different, but pattern looks very similar. And for some reason, the colors they use are also the Olympic rings here. But this is from,
I think he overlay.
Oh,
I think he put the rings on in the
You're
Olympic
right.
ring
I was
colors.
just going to say, I'm
You're
reading
right.
the legend and I'm
Sorry.
having a tough time
You're right.
drawing one-to-one.
You're right. So this is Barrett's artistic expression of the Olympic ring pattern being a potential fit based on this migration pattern, which I really like, actually.
Yeah, I think that was a really cool catch.
All right. Sorry to interrupt you, Cody.
I have a couple more things to add on to that first,
Sure.
though. So with the idea of the Olympic rings, if we go back to chapter 2, which is Don't Wing It, as the subhead, that chapter is the 100 rings of Tiet Nuet. And then in chapter 16, which was the Wilma Rudolph chapter, like I mentioned, that's where he has the huge Olympic rings graphic on, like, I think the second page of that chapter. So we do have like two very strong rings connections back to this potentially float like a butterfly, sting like a bee connection, and then also don't wing it. So interesting.
Yeah. Could be a coincidence of the day. Could be a real connection.
Could be.
Nice. That's a good catch. Really good catch. All right. Apologies, Cody. That just fit in nicely to your migration fun fact. So let's hear your last fact.
Yes.
My apologies.
No need to apologize. My last fun fact.
These are fun.
Butterfly wings are covered in tiny modified hairs called scales. These scales, which overlap like shingles, give butterflies their vibrant colors and patterns and also help them fly and retain heat. So I did not know that they butterflies are covered in tiny modified hairs called scales. Um, and then I was coming right off my searching for keywords, so I looked for scales in the book, and it appears 4 times. Or scale quotes in the book, so I did not write them down.
Okay.
I like. Do you think within the context of like music scales? I guess that's kind of where I thought, since we have such a strong music theme, music scales, if he's trying to get like clever with music here.
I do not remember.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. Awesome. Other investigations that you did, Cody, or does that wrap up your list?
I've got other investigations. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about first? Or?
No. Keep going. Strike while the iron is hot.
Ooh, the iron is sizzling. Here
It's
I go.
Molten tone of a tune.
Nice. Wow.
What did you say?
Molten tone of a tune.
Yes. Very nice. All right. One of the next things I did was start looking into possible like art and literature links between kind of butterflies and maybe people in the book,
Nice.
or people associated with the themes of the book. This is where I probably spent the vast majority of my week of research, and it probably gave me the least interesting results, unfortunately. I did like a
Sorry.
lot of looking into links between like butterflies and all of the different people who were quoted, all the different people in the book. I didn't get to all of them, but I did most of it. Yeah, I got a whole list here. Most of them are probably not even really worth mentioning. The ones I think maybe are worth mentioning is, oh gosh, I should have looked up how to pronounce this. Hakusai.
Oh my.
Oh my what?
I don't know that.
You don't think I got
just
it
feel like
right?
that's probably not right.
You don't think I got it right?
Could be right. We have no argument.
Maybe.
I don't recognize the name.
He's the famous famous for Japanese woodblock prints, and he's the Japanese artist that did like that famous wave.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Okay.
And he did a bunch of art about butterflies.
Okay.
I don't even think he's even mentioned in the book. I think I
Yeah.
got to him because when I read Japanese woodblock prints, I think I was picturing a wood box, not wood block.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like the Japanese
The puzzle box.
Puzzle
boxes.
box.
So I think that's why I had that one highlighted. And it's actually not, has nothing to do with boxes, and he was not mentioned in the book, so not a great connection there.
Solved.
I have some other connections to Japanese and Chinese legends about butterflies that are like really strong legends in their culture, but the themes of them just didn't really seem to match up with anything in the book. I got some stuff from like Robert Frost, Emily Dickinson, Vincent van Gogh, but it's all pretty standard stuff. There's nothing really interesting about it. I mean, butterflies are pretty common, whatever you'd call it, trope subject in art. So unless there's something that really stands out, it's hard to make a judgment call on that. I will say the one I got most excited about was The Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Okay. Nice.
Standard children's book. I liked it because it was a children's book, right?
Right.
And JCB's big children's book guy. So even though it seems very kind of rudimentary, it definitely would like there'd be a reason for JCB to have involved it. It is a small handful of children's books that went to space as part of this like reading program.
Really?
So I feel like that was an interesting connection that ended up in space. Obviously, in case anyone doesn't know, The Very Hungry Caterpillar is about a caterpillar that eats a bunch of fruit throughout the children's book, and at the very end, big plot twist, turns into a butterfly. I think I haven't read it in 30 years.
You're correct.
I think that's what happens.
Doesn't it get like bigger and bigger? It's kind of like an interactive book or a pop-up book almost.
Yeah, well, all the pages have holes where he ate through.
Yeah,
and that was when the book first came out, that was like mind blowing. Like nothing like that had ever happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like very expensive to do, but it was a hit.
See, that's why you're poking holes into there's treasure inside. It's the very hungry
Exactly.
caterpillar connection.
He got the idea from looking at a hole punch. I remember that from reading about it.
Wow.
Anyway, the reason I got really excited about that beyond kind of those little connections is that the first thing that the caterpillar eats in the book is an apple. And then I thought, oh my gosh, the first chapter is about apple. I was like,
Interesting.
oh, if it lines up where like
There's
different like
fruits.
fruits that he eats line up throughout the chapters, I'll be so excited. So I got really excited at that point. The second fruit that the caterpillar eats in the book is a pear, which like no strong relation. However, the word pear is in the book under our other treasures. There's a pear-shaped pendant.
Yeah.
So then I was still on board, but then it all fell apart. But I was really excited for the apple part. So yeah, like I said, not a ton to talk about with my connections to art and literature. I put in the time, but like I said, it's such a common subject that unless something really jumps out, it's hard to draw any conclusions. So that's what I got on that. I've got one other thing left to talk about. But I'll let you guys go if you guys got something you want to talk about first.
Nope.
Keep the momentum.
All right, here I go. This one is kind of like my coincidence of the day style one that is like really interesting, but then you take a step back and you go, this probably means nothing, but it was interesting.
Okay.
So I ran into this guy called James McNeill Whistler. He was an American painter in oils and watercolor and printmaker. He founded a parallel between painting and this is a exact copy and paste quote here. He found a parallel between painting and music and entitled many of his paintings Arrangements, Harmonies, and Nocturnes, emphasizing the primacy of tonal harmony. So there we've got, all our harmony connections and lots of music and painting connections. And he's an American painter, so he's in the Americas. But then the real kicker here, the Showtime moment here. As an artist, he used a stylized butterfly with a stinger as his signature monogram.
Oh.
So it's literally a butterfly with then a long like bee stinger. And I thought, ooh, A, butterfly, B, bee on a pistol, combining those two. And then also the fact that it's a monogram, which is basically what we've been assuming that JCB butterfly has been this whole time. But then, Blake's about to give it away. So I was excited about that, and I was really excited to see what it looked like, to see if it kind of looked anything like JCB's or if there were any other interesting things about it. Also, this is like a famous enough monogram that it's in, where did I pull it from? I want to say like Library of Congress. Something like that or something equal to that. So it's like pretty well known. But Blake, if you want to pull up the picture.
Okay.
To me, I think it's it's way more detailed than I would have expected and a lot more going on for a monogram. But yeah, stare at that for a second, see if anything jumps out to you. But to me, I think it's not what I was expecting it to be when I was reading about it and getting all excited about it.
Yeah.
It's way more detailed than obviously
more
like the JCB one.
Yeah.
It is not a monogram you're getting embroidered on your towels. I mean, the little like swoop-de-doos are kind of interesting with the details that we have in that purple butterfly in our Unbreakable Thread. But like you said, if it's like the idea of kind of monogram to monogram, that doesn't necessarily work in that way.
Yeah. Maybe those shaded areas match that altered hairline.
Maybe.
That's probably a stretch. Anyway, definitely a lot of cool connections between James McNeill Whistler and some of the things we had been talking about. And when I was reading it on paper, I was getting very excited about it. But when I saw the monogram itself, It wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a bummer. Good find for sure. But
I
yeah,
like to end on a bummer.
the butterfly JCB signature looks to have a little stinger on there, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
You could call it that.
Pointy.
Pointy. Interesting. Maybe coincidence of the day. Yeah. All right. So I've got a variety of Discord detective quick points and I think at least one other mailbag related to the signature actually as well that we'll get to. So this will be a little bit messy. I apologize, but I'm just going to do a little bit of stream of consciousness here. Discord detectives to start with. And then you have a question in the mailbag, Cody, that I'll get to. So get ready after this. Boy. All right. So we've already mentioned that there's a butterfly on page 173. This is from the Mysterious Writings Discord. A little bit of consternation on the Discord about whether like this being a clue from our Unbreakable Thread. A little bit of frustration, I would say. From Parsival, who's one of my favorites on Discord. I think he or she has really good ideas. How in the world we even know to pick that one section of shape out of all of the thousands of portions of shapes in the book as a clue? I can see the link between the butterfly given the similar image in TTI, but this one seems nearly impossible to have figured out.
Which leads me to believe that maybe it was meant as a confirmer, which I think is the better case scenario, right? Because that means that there's more potential for this to be like a very significant clue. Whereas if the idea was to find it in our Unbreakable Thread first, and for it not to be a confirmer, but that to be the first thing to find, then I agree that it would have to be kind of a very secondary style clue. So I think that could be a blessing in disguise, personally.
But I think, so you're saying this was not understanding or not having confidence in the connection between the butterfly and our Unbreakable Thread and making that a butterfly and there's treasure inside?
No, the question is just about how you would actually have figured that out, that the butterfly was the clue in our Unbreakable Thread without giving the information that we got.
Right. Okay, sorry. I totally misunderstood what you were saying there.
Placebo says, if this is actually a clue, I'm concerned about this hunt. Let's see, what else is good here? 100% it is a clue. This is from Waldorf. Thank you. But also left me feeling like this thing is never going to be solved. So, a little bit of consternation, as I said, from the Discord. Knowing that this we think is a solid piece of evidence, what to do with it. I think we're, trying to go down this track of taking the next step and saying, what could this mean? So don't give up hope yet, everybody. Lower part of the butterfly wings on the copyright page of our Unbreakable Thread has symmetrical-ish curlicues. Curls a little further on in Joy's Serenade.
Nice.
Or ancient letter forms. Or F-holes in violin. I know it's an odd term. Or flutter of excitement indeed. So they're talking about the kind of curlicues that are in the butterfly wings. I should probably pull that up real quick here, just to have a look at those. So some commentary about those things or speculation about what those could be. So people are trying to figure out what these little things are here. A couple people agree, including Parsival. Again, I like their opinions usually. Could it be just TTI with the center body shape being the eye? And Dr. Ricochet, who we've quoted before as well in the mailbag, I think it's TTI for there's treasure inside, indicating that's the clue, the eye being on the right wing. So potentially he's saying this little eye here TTI. I was kind of on Parsifal's boat here, saying this body could be the eye, but that TTI actually looks pretty convincing to me.
I like that better than the eye as the body, I think.
Mm-hmm. So that alone being potentially a confirmer that this is the clue in the book where everybody's kind of frustrated right now. Is like, how do you pick that out? Well, if you look closely at it, you could interpret that as a TTI. This is the clue that is meant to be related to the treasure hunt. And I think we just got confirmation of that from the illustrator, right? But I think it is solvable, actually, based on those opinions.
My test for kind of calibrating my thoughts on it is normally to think, after this is solved and JCB is explaining the correct answer, well, how would I feel about it? And I think if he pointed out that TTI and said you're supposed to see that is TTI, I think I'd feel okay about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad about it.
The back of the wings of the butterfly and the scroll work seem to have the initials JC. It's not clear. C is so fancy it could be a T or attempt at a backwards J. I thought so too, but decided on C. That makes the most sense. And then this person says, LOL, JCB doesn't make anything clear or as obvious as we would hope. No such thing as a plain C. Truth.
What are we looking at?
I think some people are interpreting this as a C. I could be mistaken, but that was other mentions of what these patterns on the wings are. But as mentioned, I like the TTI. I think I'm very happy with that.
I get to one other point for the TTI. It seems like the butterfly is very symmetrical, but then the eye, what would be the symmetry of the eye on the other wing, is kind of smudged out. And I like that, so that then you're like, like in the eye TTI, you're just left with the TTI.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a point for the TTI theory.
Yes. Curly Q means pigtail, by the way. The only one in TTI is Jacqueline Rokes on the pendant on page 189. Also, Hopi women wore butterfly whirl hairdos. Much food for thought. That's what I've gleaned from the Discord, is a variety of speculation there. Just wanted to share that with the audience. Going back to the mailbag.
Mailbag. We've got mail.
Andrew wrote in and he said, "Hey Cody, you've mentioned recently that page 90 is in the middle of part 1, but I can't follow your math. Table of contents part 1 has part 1 starting at page 19 and part 2 starting at page 200. That puts the middle around page 110, right? So I think that's wrong. Sorry. Just up front, because that should put page 90 as the middle, actually. But I just wanted to bring this up, as we didn't cover this yet in this episode, but talking about that idea that page 90 is right in the middle of the part 1. He's right, actually. Page 110 would be where the middle would be. But it would be the 90th page of part 1, even though part 1 starts at page 19. So I think both people are kind of right.
Hold on. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yep.
So while Cody does his math, I like the idea of, if we do get the 2 equal sections of part 1 on either side of page 90, the idea of this like symmetrical aspect of before page 90, after page 90, that potentially is kind of like a butterfly, and like you open the book and it's almost like these butterfly wings.
Right. So
yeah.
I think both people have valid points. So Andrew would be correct that if you start at page 19 or 20 and you wanted to go halfway through part 1, that would be page 110 of the book. However, if you only consider part 1 as being 180 pages from page 19 to page 200, then page 90 would be the center, even though. So I could see it both ways. So that's a really good point, Andrew. I dismissed it at first, but it's actually well said.
I guess I'm confused what the two differences are, but without looking at the book.
Right. So if you think about it, page 20,
chapter,
where the end of the table of contents is, you would only go 70 pages before you reach page 90, which is not halfway through part 1. But if you're just considering page 90 being the clue, part 1 is 180 pages in length, and 90 is half of that. So
okay.
Two different ways to think about it. Cody, you have a demonstration.
So if you start here,
Okay.
which is like the graphic right before chapter 1.
Yep.
And you end here, which is the last page of the last chapter, right before it turns to part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Halfway between those two is page 90.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why he asked you.
And his numbers are different, I think, because it starts at page 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I actually agree with Andrew. I don't agree with you, Cody. I'm sorry.
In what sense?
You're starting on page 19 or page 18. If you add 70 to that, you would be at page 90. 70 pages, you'd be at page 90, right?
You had 70 pages to
The start.
Oh, 18 or 19?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
72.
how many pages would you have to add to get to page 200?
I'm confused now.
All right. We will revisit this later. I don't want to get down this rabbit hole, but I think Andrew is correct.
Whoa.
Anyway, we'll
don't need to do
we'll do
live
this more
math.
offline and maybe revisit. But
so, okay.
So 90 pages would be halfway through, but because you're starting at 20, Andrew's arguing page 110 should be the one that's removed if we think this theory is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Let me look into it a little bit more.
Yep.
Because it started as not my idea. And the page numbers weren't given to me. It's just 90 was in the center. So I think I maybe screwed up where to start and where to finish. That could be the case too. So it still could be a valid idea. And I could have just done the math wrong.
No worries.
Let me double check it, but yeah, it could be both things.
All right.
I could be wrong in two different ways.
No. Let's see. I have one more mailbag, and then we'll wrap this up. Hopefully, I have the picture up. Let's see. Let us see. Yes. So this message came in from Eileen. She said, "Hello, TTI Unofficial Pods. I came across this on a video that Seth Gold had on his Instagram account. It is when he first posts about the Lion Share box. It's actually a JCB video, but this was at the end of it, what I'm showing here on the screen, which is a JCB initials. The question is this his monogram, or is the butterfly monogram his initials? See attached. You can share with the pod listeners." So I think maybe this email came in without seeing our breaking news on the butterfly that we think that that's a butterfly. We speculated on the copyright page. We speculated before it could be a creative JCB monogram, right? But I think this adds a little bit more to that conversation in that, at least in one of JCB's videos, he signed off with his actual initials here, not that butterfly symbol. I think this is an additional confirmation that I wanted to share thanks to Eileen. This was very interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a nice screenshot to grab.
Mm-hmm. So super helpful. I think it would have been more helpful a week ago. But I think it's additional confirmation that JCB does not use that butterfly symbol for his monogram. At least we haven't seen evidence of that.
Yeah, and that looks like a original handwriting as well, not a font that's just supposed to look like handwriting.
Exactly.
Nice.
Right.
Well, thanks for doing the online sleuthing to see what's been going on with the butterfly as well.
Yes. So excellent work from everybody on the Discord. Oh, I apologize. There's more information.
Nice.
Shout out to Cake, who has been doing yeoman's work on trying to figure out butterfly connections. So I have a few examples of things that Cake on the Cowlazar's Discord has been sharing openly here. So a Chavine stone vase that includes ritual design with butterflies as one artifact here. This is about Jackie Onassis, perhaps the most memorable style were her rounded butterfly sunglasses. And there's a picture of those here that she was famous for.
I like that.
The Hopi butterfly song. There is a butterfly song associated with the Hopi tribe that she's linked us to. Manfred Sunkiwa plus Charles Loma. Butterfly made in Katsina and drawing. Let's go.
Nice.
The Loma connection. I love it.
Yeah.
Star Trek Discovery Season 4's Butterfly Aliens Explained. So Star Trek Butterfly connection. Anyway,
nice.
There's more than this. I just picked out a few of the viewer-friendly ones here that had pictures associated with them. But yeah, Cake on the Cowlazar's Discord has been doing a lot of work on trying to make connections to this new butterfly information as well. So keep your ears and eyes open for Cake's postings.
Awesome.
All right, I think that is truly it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hopefully this sparks a little bit of inspiration and we don't see so much hopelessness from the Discord.
I mean, even just you saying that you've reread the first couple chapters with this lens and found what you did, I think should be very encouraging to everyone. And like we said at the top too, not every chapter, I personally don't think is going to have something that's oh, this is spot on with butterflies or wings or whatever.
Right.
But I think if we can get some solid finds in the chapters that make sense to make these solid finds, that feels very encouraging to me. So I get that it can feel overwhelming, but do not be discouraged.
Yes. Cody, any party thoughts?
No, I had to turn my my lighting thing off so I could show the pages of the book, and then accidentally hit the mirror my video thing.
Oh no.
Now I'm so confused.
You look fine on our end.
Is this not changing on your end?
No.
Oh, I'm mirroring and unmirroring myself on my end. It's amazing how different you look when you're mirrored. I look like a different person.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's how the world sees you.
100% sidetracked because of the settings on my video right now.
Yes, that's how the world sees you. Because when you see yourself, it's only in a mirror, typically.
But I think it also looks extra weird because you're not used to seeing yourself like that.
Right.
So.
Anyway,
right,
that's a little.
I'm logging off.
Yeah, we're logging off. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you have more thoughts about the butterfly clue, please keep those emails coming in. We'll try to get them covered Apologies to folks that also have emails in the mailbag. We'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming next week with a lot of great mailbags. So looking forward to that. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Searching for clues.